Meet Sword Saint Haas, who was one of the few individuals who were subject to such great admiration, so people would ask him why he actively went out to hunt monsters without a cause, and he'd tell them that his late sister is his motivation. Remember that. Haas was the MVP even amongst the hunters and loved by everyone until one day, when he decided to face off against the Shell Dragon, which is basically the highest class of dragon there is. Haas never got in touch with anyone after the battle, and when people went to the site to see if he was alive, all they saw was the corpse of the dragon and traces of a huge battle. They also saw Haas's corpse, and let's just say, he didn't kill the dragon with a steel sword. Dude, he's leaking from the tap. People then went on to search his house and found a bunch of interesting stuff. He was fond of collecting toys and not the ones that kids like to play with. They also found out that he had no sister. So the man was lying about his motivation, which at this point we can clearly see what his motivation was. What a legend. It was publicly understood that Haas was a battle lust, a literal strong battle lust. A few years later, people started to think hard about the way Haas lived his life and tried to mimic some of his actions. Dude just made bestiality cool. Example A, we can see this random dude learning slime anatomy with a hands-on experience. It is the best way to learn. This would then go on to be a trend, and people started to satisfy themselves inside the dungeon, giving us this legendary panel, and I quote, and that's how people started jacking off inside dungeons. Bravo, man. The focus then shifts to a girl named Cheong from a faraway land who came to the continent looking for a better life. She stops by an inn and finds the manager quite weird. I mean, of course, you would when the first thing they offer you is a pair of condoms. Are they flavored? Oh, it is a magical world. Oh my goodness, man. She then sits by the table looking for possible jobs, and a random old man puts his hands on her shoulders and advises her to look up Monster Hunter. She tries to make her way back to the inn after drinking too much, but after being unable to make her way back, she decides to let loose and sleep on a bench. You know, live a little. Oh, but then some random guys approach her while she's asleep and feed her a strange liquid. She wakes up only to find that something strange is happening to her body. She can only assume the worst because, of course, she does. This is a very sus situation. But then the random dudes hand her their goodwill card. It was a hangover cure potion, and they were just trying to be good people. And the boys just wanted a good deed stamp. They were just polite married men. I'm sorry. I just love this part so much. Anyways, Cheong is living her life smoothly, camping out in the open, preserving her cash as much as she can. Some invisible force begins to make itself useful by giving her a full body massage while she's asleep. How considerate. It's even so kind enough to take off all the clothes because it's getting in the way. Like, come on, man. She wakes up to notice that all her clothes are off, and the comic goes out of its way to let us know that this was the deed committed by the smooth invisible hand, or Smith's invisible hand, depending on the translation. So some dude named Smith is getting... Can someone hit me up, man? Can you help a brother out? I mean, it says all sexes and all ages. She then heads to the entrance of the northern forest, which is a cave. She makes it through the cave without much of a problem and sees a bright exit leading up to the forest itself. She looks around and notices that there's a lack of flora and fauna despite the forest's reputation and appearance. So when she sees a radish just buried inside some soil, she finds it odd that it'd be growing so out of place. And I can only wonder how they're going to ruin this, and then fix it immediately, and then ruin it again. Thinking that it might be a monster or a rare herb, she decides to pull the radish out, and oh boy, it's a biggie. Not only is the vegetable huge, but it also has eyes and a mouth similar to a human face, and it seems to be having a great time being held by her. She starts to slap the radish hard in an attempt to make it stay quiet, but the veggie is having the best time of its life right now. I like how they have the weirdest, most nonsensical names for this species. This one is the moaning mandrake, which basically starts to moan as someone plucks it out, or more aptly known as the moan drake. A man then jumps down from the trees and tells you to take care of the mandrake fast or the monsters will start to gather around it. She has no idea what to do with it, so the man decides to take it away from her, and holy fakey nature, that mandrake got what it wanted. Literally shut his mouth with a technique that is normally used to make others moan harder. Chiyoung doesn't really have anything to say about this as she watches the mandrake get hydrated to its very core with a ton of vitamin D. He does clarify that that was the only way for him to keep them safe, since the mandrake is known to shut up only when they get to do what that one was doing to him. Chiyoung then sees a hut in the nearby corner and goes inside it. She doesn't notice anyone inside and thinks that the hut has been abandoned. The hut turned out to be more than just a hut because it moves as soon as she enters and her clothes begin to dissolve for some reason. She finds a thin wall and blasts through it and gets out of the hut covered in some weird slime. Since her clothes are toast, she has to sew them back and she changes into just a t-shirt in the meantime. Her body begins to heat up and she starts to feel a bit too excited in the middle of a forest. Since there's not a woman drake, that tends to work on females. She has to help herself and it starts with a single finger. What was one then turns into two, but two couldn't fit, so we go back to one. All this hot and heated action just gets our protagonist thinking about that one time her sister brought a boyfriend home and started chugga chugga choo choo. She keeps this up for an entire hour and then comes back to her senses. She had to. I mean, she was literally going full speed in an open space. The dwarf from earlier meets her again and points at the monster hut, asking her if she did, well, you know, basically what she just did. She tries to sideline the subject, which gets the dwarf to ask if she's okay, as he knows that the monster produces an aphrodisiac gas in liquid. She's relieved that he didn't see anything happen, but that moment of relief turns into horror when she shows her how he took care of the mandrake. That poor fricker drowned in it. It looks like he still has the need for cream also, but we're gonna move on. Apparently he got affected by the gas too and had to make sure he took care of it properly, so oh my gosh, that was super convenient for him to have a moan drake close by. As a parting gift, he gives her a dose of monster secretion and tells her that she needs to study more if she wants to be a proper monster hunter. She thanks him for the spoils, but the dude's like, don't be. It was just payment for the show. Leaving all that drama behind, she still has to get out of the forest and find her way, which makes her wonder why she didn't ask the dude for some directions. She then comes across a fork and has to make a judgment call. We're never told which way she went, but she then finds herself in front of the sea, which also looks like a lake, which are basically the same thing. Despite not knowing what the place is, she decides to let loose and rest there. And how many times is she gonna do this in places she doesn't know? But then a huge creature jumps out of the water. And show of hands, who was surprised? No one? Okay, great. I didn't think so. Meet the man-eating flyfish. Not exactly the kind of thing you want to come up face to face with. Does a few fancy moves before jumping right at her with his mouth wide open. She isn't phased though, to say the least, and she puts out her fist and uses some technique that I cannot describe because I don't get it, to break its jaw open. The monster then falls down and starts to crawl back pretty quickly. Chiyoung notices that there's another woman on the beach side right on the monster's way. She warns her, but the woman doesn't really need it as she makes quick work of the fricker. Chiyoung hurries to the woman to ask if she's all right. Instead of getting the expected reply of, yeah, I'm fine, the monster was way too weak for me, the woman tells her to speak politely and threatens to kill her. Apparently, she was out there fishing and the man-eating fish was her catch, which explains why her mood was not exactly the best. She just sits on a rock with a rod sticking out in the open sea as Chiyoung constantly bombards her with questions. The girl's pretty weird in her own rights. I mean, she's nothing special, just another girl who lives with her parents who runs a sushi shop of all things. The rod then starts to move as she hoists it up to see an angle rotor fish sticking to the bait. She then plucks out the antenna from the fish's head and puts it in her mouth and Hey guys, Mr. Recap from the future here. I was so dumbfounded at this segment that I couldn't do anything but make this noise. So sorry about that, but you kind of understand, right?
I guess putting it in her normal mouth is okay, but if she uses the entire antenna to enhance her eating experience from the other mouth.
Oh. We get another info card explaining how this monster works. It's also known as the vibe anglerfish. When you detach the little doohickey from its antenna, it vibrates for like 20 minutes. It's great information to know. As weird as she is, this adventurous fisher girl is the only person she can ask for directions from. She points her in the direction of a mountain, after which there's a rock shaped like a sword and basically that's the destination. Chiang goes on to ask that being a native means that she must have seen a lot of monsters in her lifetime, but the girl disagrees. She explains that monsters are rarely seen and only known to most people from books. She then remembers what the dwarf said about her tendency to attract monsters and asks the girl if she wanted to travel together. She gets a different idea about her tone and makes a suspicious sign with her hands, asking if she rolled like that. Chiang's idea is pretty simple. She will attract the monsters, the girl will teach her about them and their nature, and they'll take it down together and share the spoils. The girl is fairly confused about it and asks why she would want to use the monster after Chiang is done with it. So you can paint the picture of how these people tend to treat the monsters in this world. Chiang clarifies herself and then the girl agrees, only if she got an advance contract fee. She doesn't really have a ton of money for her to be giving it out like that, so she presents the secretion from earlier. The girl notices it to be shelter hole sap, which is an oddly specific name, but I'm gonna roll with it. It's enough to make her tag along, but only under the condition that she will be the one to call dibs first. And you know what? Have at it. Chiang thinks that the girl will mostly be interested in parts that satisfy her lust, so it won't be a problem. They head to Canal City and stop by an inn to book 2 rooms. Chiang thinks that 2 rooms is a waste of money and they should share the space, but the girl has a different idea in mind. And how you feel comfortable to share a room with someone you don't even know the name of is beyond me. How have you not asked her name yet? Canal City is most famous for its men, and the girl wants to know just how skilled they are at directions. The manager then lets them in on a small secret. Her husband doesn't stay home often, so she goes to the man living in the house with a red roof at the quay. Apparently, he's the premier product around there. The town is buzzing over a bounty put up over a specific monster, which blows Chiang's mind since it's priced at 5 billion. One of the random dudes recognizes it as the same dragon species that Haas fought all those years ago. It is the offspring of the monster that was so good that even Haas wasn't able to handle the pleasure of the battle and it died from it. Meanwhile, the Fisher girl is already at the man's house and asks him to do a deadlift session with her. In case you were wanting to see how that session went, well, you don't get to see it. That's the neat part, because they don't even show it. We get to the part where they're back in their own inn and Chiang is enjoying her lunch. The Fisher girl wakes up at noon, still yawning, so we know how her night went. She even confirms it when Chiang asks her what her secret to fair skin is, and it's sex. That's the secret. They finally take their time to formally introduce each other, and after 3 chapters, we get to learn the Fisher girl's real name. It's Chung Ja, and I think I prefer Fisher girl. I'm kidding. Introductions aside, the 2 girls don't have any idea about their next move, and Chiang wants to go for monsters who have a high price value in market. This also means that they're rare and hard to find. Seeing her enthusiasm, Chung Ja asks what her abilities are, and she basically bites any of her fingers to strengthen her corresponding body part. And Chung Ja asks what we all immediately are thinking. And in the following panel, dude, this Manhwa just does not care, man. They start talking about an armored dragon, and Chung Ja doesn't quite believe her when she mentions that she saw a bounty for the extinct monster, mostly because she was busy getting hunted, the details of which are now revealed to Chiang. In fact, Chung Ja goes a little too overboard with the details and shows her a mark on her stomach explaining just how deep the cave exploration was. I guess we know what's happening inside the dungeon now. They then get back to the main topic, and the idea of hunting an armored dragon for $5 billion is nice and all, but Chung Ja points out that heading to their habitat is now illegal. The entrance to the place is guarded by Feladine and Baldbarian, who seem to be some super strong baddies or something. In order to get a legal pass, they'd have to prove their skills to the 8 elite knights and gain their approval, so now we have the gameplay loop. While they're on the subject of hunting the dragon, Chung Ja makes it clear that she isn't doing it for the 5 billion prize money. Oh, no. Chiang finds it odd, but then Chung Ja begins to explain one of the main reasons why the dragon is priced so high. It is none other than the story of Haas the Knight, where the main point is that the dragon's remains do not rot for a very long time. They release a fair amount of electricity and are soft enough for the most tender skin. In a layman's terms, they're used to make Hot Wheel toys. Haas was the first person to discover this amazing fact, so I'm guessing Chung Ja is more driven by lust than she is by wealth, and you know what? Frickin' more power to you. At least she's driven. They're about to head to the 8 elite knights to get the pass, and a change in plan occurs and the dragon appears right in front of them out of nowhere. The armored dragon begins to run riot inside the city, tearing apart people and destroying everything in its path. You know, typical dragon things. Chiang is unable to process what's happening, but Chung Ja reminds her that it is her chance to take down the dragon. She knows that hunting is important, but she prioritizes saving people. But Chung Ja doesn't frickin' care, so she pulls out a sword and goes for the kill. She climbs on top of the dragon and sees her gym partner stuck there on the verge of death. She saves him, mostly because of his tool, and she might need to use it again sometime soon. More specifically, after this fight. He does lose one of his hands, though, so those nights are not gonna be the same. After After launching herself up top, she comes down at full speed with her knife pointed right on top of the dragon's soft spot. Surprisingly, she can't penetrate it, and the dragon just flicks her away. Xiang comes to her aid and says beating the dragon is not an option and she should find a place to hide. Of course, that was never going to happen, and she now prepares to face the dragon herself. Being ready is cool and all. That is, if she was actually going to throw hands, but all she does is run away or chase it around endlessly. Since the dragon is big and slow, it is easy for her to read its patterns and evade its attacks. The dragon grows tired of this cat and mouse game and decides to go full-on berserk and confronts her head-on. Xiang taunts the dragon, and it flies with all its might and tries to squash her with a single claw. She does manage to dodge, but doesn't find a weak spot at all, so naturally she decides to go for the eye. This doesn't work because it has a shell protecting the face too. I mean, you can literally see it from a mile away. I don't know why what was she thinking? Her punch severely backfires and she finds one of its teeth jabbed hard inside her arm. She manages to break free, but the damage is done and she realizes that her life is about to end soon. It's a do or die situation, and Xiang then gambles everything on one special move, the mutual destruction. She then goes rampant on the beast, punching it consecutively until her temporary boost of power runs out. And I hate to do this to y'all, but that's the end. That's where we're gonna leave it off today. If y'all enjoyed this recap and you want to see the next part, or you want to see more recaps like this, be sure to let us know, and I will see y'all in the next video. Thank y'all very much for watching. Love y'all, and peace!